good evening and welcome back. It is April 1st, 2015. I am your host, Ralph Lillig. Very happy to have you here. No, it is not an April Fool's joke. I'm always here on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday I tell you about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, 478-HOPE, area code 208-478-HOPE. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. Simple as that. 478-HOPE. They are the antithesis of all things Planned Parenthood. In other words, they want to bring life into the world healthy and vibrant rather than crushing life as Planned Parenthood does through their actions and their deeds. So please, won't you see if you can't help? Call 478-HOPE, Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. See how you can help an expectant mother and a newborn baby, or a baby to be born. Now, for the last few weeks, I've been telling you about Riggin James Page, this little 2-year-old guy that has just really been through it. So I just want to remind you quickly that there is going to be a fundraiser for Riggin James on April the 11th of this year, and it's put on by, and this is a long title, Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. Now, these folks raise money to sponsor children who need help, and they do it through donations, sponsors, auctions, and raffles. So they are going to have an event on the 11th. That's the weekend after this coming. And now Friday the 10th, they will have a meet and greet, and that'll be at 6 p.m. Then Saturday the 11th, at 11:30, they will have the Exceptional Kids Rodeo. At 12:30, they will have the mini bull riding. And at 1 p.m., they'll have the benefit bull riding, 3 sections, and a short go. And throughout the day, they'll have a silent auction. Now, if you're interested in helping this little guy, this Riggin James fellow, boy, this little guy, he's really been through it. You can buy tickets for this from Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. And I just had the information right here. Well, and I don't have it. I gave you all that information and I don't have it. Well, look it up then. If you can't find it online, it's Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. And you can look it up on the internet under that title, Beat the Odds Benefit Bull Riding. And 5 tickets for $20 or 1 ticket for $5. And you'll have an opportunity to win this really nice saddle. If you have a horse, you know what the importance and the expense of a good saddle. Now on the 24th, Friday the 24th, I told you last week and the week before about the Irish Hoolie that's coming up, and I explained to you what an Irish Hoolie is. So I'm just going to remind you that there will be an Irish Hoolie April the 24th at the Bannock County Veterans Memorial Building, 300 North Johnson Avenue. That's Johnson and Fremont. I think it's Fremont. And this will be at 5:30. It'll be from 5:30 p.m. till 10 o'clock. $28 per person, limited seating available. If you want to buy a table for this, $200 for a table of 8. You can buy tickets at the Falling Rock Productions Captain Bengal's Comic Cove at 348 North 3rd Street. Our Ladies Bookstore at 1023 Yellowstone Avenue, Suite E, or online at idahoirishstudies.com. idahoirishstudies.com. That's for the Hoolie, and Hoolies can be a lot of fun. And now that's on the 24th. Now on the 25th and 26th of April, there will be the Friends of the Irish Studies, Idaho, is hosting a beginning Irish immersion weekend at April the 25th and 26th, 1901 Alvin Ricken Drive, and it will run from 9 o'clock to 4:30 each day. It's a Saturday and Sunday. I've been to 2 of these, the Irish Language Immersion Studies. They're a lot of fun. I must confess that I didn't learn how to speak Irish. I learned more about the cultural heritage of that part of my family, and it was very interesting, taught by professors who teach this. If you have an interest in things Irish, or if you are of Irish heritage and you're interested from that perspective, it's very, very affordable. It's $50 for community members or $20 for students. And that's going to be the weekend of April 25th and 26th at 1901 Alvin Ricken Drive here in Pocatello, 9 a.m. to 4:30. Friends of Irish Studies. Now this is actually an introduction, if you will, that gives you an introduction not only to the language and the culture, but it makes you aware if you want to learn more about it. There's actually a course in Irish Studies that is presented at Missoula, and but you can do this online. It's a very reasonable course, and if you're, I'm not a good student. If I were, I'd be speaking Irish to you right now, but if you are a good student and if you are more patient than I am, then, and I'm not good on getting online and doing this, but you may be. So don't forget, that's the 24th and 25th. $50 for regular Pocatellans, or $20 for students. And as I said, I've been to two of them. They're a lot of fun. And it sounds like a lot, 9 to 4:30 sounds like a long time. Man, that time goes fast. And you really do learn a lot about the Celtic, the Irish part of the Celtic culture. It's fascinating. Now I wanted to share with you newspaper headlines, and this is just to lighten things up a little bit. These could be out of the Idaho State Journal. I'm not going to say that they are. I won't say that they aren't. But these are from newspapers around the country. And the reason I'm going to share this with you is part of to kind of restate the importance of good communication and writing skills. And if you are, as I am, a reader of the Idaho State Journal, the writing skills do suffer somewhat there. And sometimes, well, they just seem to get the objects messed up with the verbs and so on. And we all do that. I pick on the ISJ a lot because they're the only game in town. Like the guy that keeps going to the crooked poker game, and he goes because it's the only game in town. Well, you go to the Idaho State Journal. So here are some possible headlines that you may or may not see in the Idaho State Journal. And this shows the importance of communicating properly. Our children today they're not taught to speak grammatically correctly. They don't get their tenses correct. They don't put the punctuation in the right places. And we're all guilty of it to some extent. Certainly I am. But these kind of they accentuate just how bad it can be. All right, these are headlines, newspaper headlines. Police campaign to run down jaywalkers. Think about that. Safety experts say school bus passengers should be belted. Drunk gets 9 months in violin case. Teacher strikes idle kids. Let's see if I can get it. Here's one. Enraged cow injures farmer with axe. Think about it now. Plane too close to ground, crash probe told. You think? Miners refuse to work after death. The importance of communication and getting it right. Killer sentenced to die for second time in 10 years. If strike isn't settled quickly, it may last a while. Okay. Like I said, these could be Idaho State Journal. They're not. We've had this strange weather recently, so this could easily have appeared in the ISJ. Wouldn't have surprised me. Cold waves linked to temperatures. Yeah, really. And you notice I'm wearing a sweater vest tonight. As you recall, yesterday I think it was yesterday was 75 degrees roughly. Today got up to 44. Okay, well, enough of that humor. Now, if you are, I love to read when I can, and I like to keep up with the news as much as I can. The other newspaper that I get regularly, because I can get it on my doorstep every day except Sunday, and they do a Saturday-Sunday edition, is the Wall Street Journal. Can't get Investor's Business Daily, which is a great newspaper, but you can only get it through the mail in this area, and so it's always late. But the Wall Street Journal, I get it daily. And this last Saturday and Sunday, there was an interesting article in, the weekend 21st and 22nd, a reformation for Islam. Now, I've been talking to you a lot about Islam, and this was a very interesting article called A Reformation for Islam. It was written by, let's see if I can get her name here. Oh, phooey, I had it right on the top of Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And She is from that region of the country. And in just a moment, I'm going to share a video with you that I think you'll find very informative and very interesting. But you never hear anybody talking about the need for reformation in Islam. All we hear about Islam is what we see. 99% of the crimes we see happening in the world are perpetrated by Muslims. Their faith is Islam. And even though Mr. Obama can't bring himself to even point a finger in that direction, the ISIS stands for Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Islam is on everybody's mind today, and what's going on has gotten so bad. Now, the Muslims have been fighting each other as well as killing Christians and Jews for centuries. There's nothing new in what's going on in Islam. For almost 15 centuries now, they've been busy slaughtering anybody that didn't listen to Muhammad, or as they like to phrase it, the Prophet Muhammad. There's no prophet in that prophet. As well as each other. And here is, it would be like, Catholics and Lutherans slaughtering each other, because even though we both believe that Jesus is the risen Christ, we both pray to the same God, Abraham. I mean, to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And our tenets are almost identical. There are just a couple of little differences between the Orthodox Lutherans, not the evangelical Lutherans, but the Orthodox, like the Missouri Synod, and the Catholics. Can you imagine if we were slaughtering each other because we had those differences? Well, that's what's happening between the Sunni and the Shia. They both say that they believe in Abraham, and in fact they say the same Abraham as the Jews and Christians, although I have difficulty with that. And yet they're slaughtering each other in the name of Islam, and everybody who disagrees with them also. Now, we know, as you know, that the Reformation, as it's called, was absolutely necessary to get the church back on track. Now, the church never went away. There was no need to restore something that wasn't lost. And I know I'm going to be at odds with some of my friends in the audience. I don't mean this to be pejorative, but if you study the church history, it never went away. However, we did need a Reformation, and we needed it desperately. And there was a Reformation. And many of the things that happened in the old days, so to speak, were done away with. And they were done away with to bring, to restore the not gone away, but to the truth of Christianity, to bring it back in line with the truth of the Scriptures. But you don't hear a lot about a Reformation in Islam. Well, why is that? One of the reasons is that people who study or practice Islam are not allowed to talk about Reformation, because they're told by Muhammad that if they do, they have to die. They are apostate. So they don't dare talk about Reformation. But there are some brave souls within Islam today who are Muslims who are saying, you know what, we need a Reformation. We need to have some changes, because those who are true believers, not these nut jobs that are destroying the world, but those who are true believers in Islam, believe that it is a religion of peace. And if you have the post-Medinan, I get the Mecca and Medina confused sometimes, but if you have the second part, if you will, of Islam, is all very warlike. But the early Islam, the first couple, 2 or 3 years where Muhammad was proselytizing, trying to build his religion, early Islam was more or less peaceful. It wasn't until he moved to, and I get them confused, Mecca, I guess it was, where he decided it was necessary to bring Islam to the masses at the tip of the sword. Now, there are many, many differences between Islam and Orthodox Christianity or non-Orthodox Christianity, many differences. One of them is that we don't proselytize at the tip of the sword. Islam still does. We don't practice slavery, haven't for 1,000 years. Yes, I know about the slavery in the United States, and I know that that was done by many people in the name of Christianity, and you and I both know that that was not Christian. And we had, if you will, through the Civil War, a postmodern Reformation, where we in 1964, a lot of things happened in this country. 64 and 65, with Martin Luther King and a number of people who believed that things had to change. And so even though the legality of slavery was long gone, the vestiges of it mentally and psychologically had to be changed. And we had another, if you will, reformation in this nation. Islam has not enjoyed that universally. Slavery is still very much alive within the world of Islam. And so this author, Ali, writes an excellent article, A Reformation for Islam. And if you are one who likes to go online and you want to look it up, Saturday, Sunday, March 21st and 22nd in the Wall Street Journal review section. It's an easy read. She makes several points. She says at least 70% of all the fatalities in armed conflicts around the world last year were in wars involving Muslims. And I'm surprised she only uses 70%, because how many wars have you heard going on that wasn't the Muslims against the rest of the world? And then she makes a very, in italics, makes a very bold statement. Islam is not a religion of peace. And you and I can see that daily. All right, now, this lady, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, is under death watch, so to speak. I don't know how many fatwas the peace-loving Muslims have placed on her head for having the audacity to tell the truth. And one of the things she's spoken out about quite loudly is the circumcision of women. Now, this is a strange topic here in the West. It's very difficult for us to get our head around, because it makes no sense, quite frankly. And I have to say, as I understand it, female circumcision, or mutilation would be a more appropriate word, female circumcision is not in the Quran, as far as I know. It's not in the Hadith either, and it is not a universal tenet of Islam. That being said, the only places in the world where it's practiced is where Islam is taught. Now, you can say that somehow Islam was hijacked. You can say whatever you want to, but the fact is that, to my knowledge, it is only Muslims who are practicing female circumcision. So, Josh, do we have that wound up? Please watch this.
Female genital cutting. Most commonly done before puberty, some young girls will have their clitoris completely removed to preserve their virginity.
It's important to talk about what happens physically, so that every human being, male and female, understand that the genitals of the female are cut, that the clitoris is cut, that the labia are cut, that the vagina is sewn shut.
Female genital mutilation is not advocated in Islam in any way, shape or form. It doesn't appear in the Quran, but has very much been adopted by some Muslim societies.
It's going everywhere in the world where the Muslim Brotherhood goes.
It can cause bleeding, infection, infertility, and even death.
It cannot be compared to male circumcision. It is very different. It is to limit the sexuality of the female.
Circumcision is healthy for girls. I know this. Purified girls grow taller and get marriage proposals, but unpurified girls stay short and stubby.
It's definitely linked to the issue of honor, because again, it's about controlling female sexuality.
Circumcision is the reason why Muslim women are virtuous, unlike Western women who run after their sexual appetite in any place with any man.
We are seeing more cases of female genital mutilation in the US, in Canada, and in UK. So it has been imported into the West as a cultural practice.
My legs were spread and I just thought, this is not right. And then I just felt this pain. I remember just screaming, and I think everyone was just shocked, because it's like I had like 50 pairs of hands just cover my mouth, my nose, and I was fighting. I remember just fighting. I can hear it, the sound, just the cutting.
I remember before it began, I was still lying there. She was negotiating with my mum with the money, and my mum had to pay her extra for using a new razor.
One of my sisters died from it.
One of your sisters died?
Yeah.
How old was she?
She was a week.
Because FGM is illegal in the West, many families do it under the table. They do it in secret, and in some cases they take the girls back to their home countries, have this done on them, and then bring them back.
What this holiday will mean for girls as young as 5 will be a journey abroad during which their clitoris will be cut out, either entirely or partially.
It happens to about 6,000 girls every day. It's a plague, it's an epidemic.
In my family, my cousins were just going for circumcision the next day, so everybody was preparing food and they were making big event. So I was in my uncle's house, so I had small booklets on how harmful circumcision is, and I sneaked up to his room and I gave him the books. And I told him, don't do that. You know what happened? He came, because his eldest daughter was circumcised. He came crying, and he really asked his daughter to forgive him, and he refused for the other two to be circumcised the next day. The lashback I got from my mom, that how dare me to talk about these issues to men. You know? But from that day, thank God they are now generations, they are mothers and they have their children, there's no circumcision took place.
And there must be fathers like that out there.
Yeah.
You know, that,
I'm sure he was so indifferent because it was a decision made by women, because that's how men actually put the burden on women on these kind of things.
It's important to say that women are helping to perpetuate these things by committing some of the acts, but at this point it is still a game of survival. When a woman is raising her daughter, she knows that there are consequences for not following a particular order.
And when you ask the women, they tell you, but if they don't get circumcised, they will not get married. And that's so brilliant, that men always sneak out of responsibilities and say, this is not what we said. The women are the ones who are doing this. Why do we think patriarchy is never questioned? Yeah, because we women are the main maintainers to that system. They're always made to preserve the patriarchal societies.
When Pakistani woman said to me the other day, she said, you know, when we are born, we are controlled by our father. Then we are controlled by our brothers. Then we are married and we are controlled by our husbands. And today she said, I'm controlled by my sons. And this is essentially power patriarchy control in a woman's life. And sometimes they are the ones who just give in to all the stereotypes, and they, you know, they actually accept some of the abuse that's doled out to them. I've had many women say, no, it's okay, I'm happy to be this way. You know, I'm happy to be submissive. I'm happy that someone else tells me what to do. This embedded patriarchy, the power and the politics is such a lethal combination.
I sometimes look back and I think, wow, how different could my life have been had I been born in a different geographical setting, in a different time, in a different era, a different place on the map. It's just by chance. My father came here in the late 50s from Afghanistan. He wanted us to have the life that he never experienced. And my mother was the same way. She didn't get to experience a lot of opportunities, choices, and the things that I have. So my parents lived vicariously through us and encouraged us to explore every opportunity we got, to live life, to experience things the way that they didn't get to. I'm a clinical therapist. I work primarily with women who are survivors of domestic violence. There's no self-esteem in these women. There's no self-worth. How do you weaken people or handicap them? You take away their ability to make decisions for themselves. You take away that ability for them to decide what is right and wrong. Autonomy, empowerment.
Well, that's it. The article, as I was saying, was in the Wall Street Journal. It was March 21st and 22nd, a Reformation for Islam. Now, I don't speak, generally, I don't speak positively about Islam because, quite honestly, I don't see a lot to speak positively about. That being said, it is still a major religion. I would say that it's a major cult, but that's me. And I know I'm quite outspoken, and there are people who are going to say, Ralph, how can you say such a thing? Because that's the way I view it. I see this Muhammad, who comes along 600 years after Christ and establishes his own religion, and does so supposedly by being visited by angels, and proceeds to reshape the world according to his vision, even though he declares that they are from Allah. And please, never confuse Allah with God. They are not the same. And I mean that in the terms of the Western God. God, as you and I know God, is not the same as this Allah. This is an invention, if you will, of Muhammad, and actually the name comes from a contraction of several pagan names, from the moon goddess and so on. That's for another time. Anyway, so that's our lesson, if you will, for this week on things Islam. Now we're having a lot of things happening right here in our own state, and we haven't caught up on news for quite a while. So I want to get kind of caught up on things. Most of it coming out of the Idaho State Journal, because it's the only poker game in town, and I know they're cheating me, but it's the only game in town. There was a letter to the editor that was written on March 18th, and I know the lady who wrote the letter. She's a very skilled writer, and she's very passionate, I think, about the right things. She wrote this letter, and she also sent this to the legislature. Now, this is from March the 18th, so I grant you it's 2 weeks out of date, but it sets the stage, because right now what we're going through, this Common Core has raised its ugly head again, and is really raising it now. The governor is pushing it. His anointed ones are pushing it. Common Core is, I believe it's a perversion of education. But here again, that's me. You can find out, however, if you'd like to get a little inside scoop on what Common Core is all about. The John Birch Society, I am not a member, but I do read their stuff, because they, generally speaking, they do their homework before they publish. The John Birch Society, in the New American Magazine, I don't remember what the date is on this. However, they had an excellent article on Common Core, and this was and you can get this. You can go online with the John Birch Society and look up Common Core, a scheme to rewrite education, and it'll give you. It's an eye opener. It's an eye-popping eye opener, and it'll tell you why I say it raises its ugly head. Now, several states in the union have withdrawn from Common Core. Indiana being the first one, and that's interesting because of what Indiana is going through right now in this whole LGBTQ assault, attack on Indiana's leaders, basically on Christianity, and that's for a little bit later in the program. But I want to read this letter to you. Now, since this letter was published, the Idaho Parental Rights Bill, I believe, was passed. But there's a lot to this bill that never saw the light of day as far as just regular people, folks like you and me. We saw this as being, well, we were told this was very necessary, this Idaho Bill of Rights. We're told it was not necessary, when indeed it is. And a lot of this goes to the so-called gay agenda, which does everything. The gay agenda attacks everything from the Christian church, the Jewish religion, through the family structure. It is a pervasive, all-encompassing attack on natural law. And natural law, look it up if you don't already know what natural law is. But so there was a need for a Bill of Rights, but it was being distorted. And I thought that this lady, and I'll read it to you, I thought she kind of covered it very well. She said, this was March 18th in the Your Letters section of the ISJ. HB 113, the Parental Rights Bill, is necessary. Historically, the liberty of parents to direct the upbringing of their children has been a fundamental right, but this right has continued to be eroded by courts since 2000, when the Supreme Court, Troxel versus Granville, failed to reiterate the time-honored rule requiring both a compelling state interest and the least intrusive means. In all the years that the courts have upheld this liberty, parental rights have never been used to legally justify child abuse or neglect, or to force public schools to supply specific textbooks per the parents' dictates. And that's an important issue there. But across the United States, incidents of overreaching governmental agencies infringing upon the fundamental rights of parents is apparent, especially in the areas of health care and education. It says, consider the case of Justina Pelletier in Massachusetts as one example, and unfortunately she doesn't put that in here, so I'll just tell you, if you want to look it up, Justina Pelletier in Massachusetts, and it was a court case. House Bill 113 does not protect abusive or neglectful parents because it does not exempt parents from child abuse and child neglect laws. There is always a compelling state interest in protecting children, which means the state can step in and intrude on the parent's fundamental rights for the sole purpose of protecting children. House Bill 113 does ensure that the parents will be protected from an unwarranted intrusion by an overreaching government agency. And I think you've seen it, or we've seen this for some time now. The government is getting its nose, like the camel with his nose under the tent flap, more and more into our rights as parents and telling us how we must raise our children, or the state will take them and raise them for us. In the absence of this protection on a national level, and a judiciary that increasingly seems to want to rewrite our laws and constitutional rights, we must act now and ensure that Idaho families are protected from unnecessary governmental infringement and that the fundamental right of a parent to direct the upbringing of their children is preserved for future generations. HB 113 doesn't create new rights. It codifies a fundamental right that has always been a part of the history and culture of America, yet is now at risk. And this is by Heather Disselcon here in Pocatello. There was going to be a bill that was going to be rushed through, and it was flawed. There was an altered bill that I believe has passed, and it was much better. And I think it was due to people like Ms. Disselcon here, who took the time to look and see what that bill means. You know, our legislatures, I think they just are wrapping up the session now. I'm not sure if they have any loose ends to tie up. They've had a busy session, but the legislature is inundated with bills. When they go into session every January, they have a stack like this waiting for them, and they have to wade through that. And many times they're lucky if they get to see any of the wording in the bill. Lobbyists fill the purpose of persuading our legislature on how to vote on certain things. So it is extremely important for you and me, we who are the voters who send these legislators to the legislature, it's very important that we get involved, as did Heather Disselcon here with this letter. So kudos to you, Heather, and I'm glad that that went through. Excuse me. And the bill, I believe, has passed, and it is not flawed like it was before. It's not to beat you up. This is from March 19th in the Your Letters section of the Idaho State Journal. As I said, I'm going to get a little caught up here. I was in an auto accident January 21st, 2005. An individual ran a steady red light and totaled my car. I was hurt in the accident, but really injured by the Pocatello prosecution attorney. The person who hit me had 38 prior incidents, ranging from DUIs to leaving the scene of an accident. His criminal record covers 3 counties. I followed his case through the court system. I called prosecuting attorney Nancy Ferris and stated my concern about this individual getting off yet again with an amended charge. This guy could have killed me if he had hit me just inches back on my vehicle. Well, the system hit me again. The person who caused me to have to purchase a new vehicle, spend many hours in the doctor's office, and have mental anxiety over driving, got off with driving following too close. Are you kidding me? He was not behind me. He took out the front end of my car. It is unbelievable what the criminals in this county get away with, and the innocent have to pay and pay and pay again. This fellow will kill someone someday, and who will be responsible? The Pocatello prosecuting office should be held accountable. My husband was sentenced to 40 days in jail for not purchasing a driver's license and a $300 fine. No one was hurt by his action. Where's the justice for those who are the victims? I am the victim of the system. It is time that the victim had a voice in what happens to the individuals that causes them pain and anguish. It does no good to contact the prosecuting attorney. They do not hear you. It is all about getting the cases over and fines collected. The fellow who hit me paid a $90 fine. Are you kidding me? No justice for me. And this was written by Linda Barlow of Chubbuck. And not as a defense, Linda, but I will tell you that I doubt that this is the case in this county, because the caseload per prosecutor here can't be anywhere near what I'm familiar with in Los Angeles. I do remember one of the things I learned early on, and I had to teach my officers once I became a supervisor, was doing a proper and thorough investigation, especially in accidents, because they can be very nebulous sometimes, who hit John, so to speak. If the officer doesn't do his job properly, and there is room for doubt in some cases, the prosecutor can be a victim of the officer's bad report writing, the supervisor's bad judgment on letting it go through, and not having proper evidence. That doesn't excuse any of this. With 38 priors, you'd think the guy may have lost his license, maybe even got locked up. I'm not copying a plea for the prosecutor, but sometimes they are victims of shoddy work by the police officer. I don't know that that's the case here, for whatever that's worth. All right. This, for me, is good news, and I hope it is for you. The Idaho House passed a bill Monday that would take away the government's power to force Idaho residents to sell their land for trails and greenways, eminent domain. And boy, I really applaud Senator Guthrie, because it was he who carried the water on this. And this one, fortunately, started in the Senate and went to the House. So often it starts the other way around, never gets through the Senate. They just bottom drawer it for whatever reason. But in this case, it started in the Senate. The House voted 54-15 to pass the bill and then sent it to the governor for consideration. Now, I don't know if the governor signed it. I believe he did. Representative Christy Perry, Republican of Nampa, said the power called eminent domain infringes on personal property rights. She says stripping the power from local governments would aid the fairness of negotiations with citizens being asked to sell their land. This is not a healthy relationship between the government and the private property owners, agreed Representative Gail Batt, Republican of Wilder. We're here to protect the private property rights of our citizens. Representative Ilana Rubel, Democrat from Boise, said eminent domain is rarely used and argued it would be nearly impossible for a city to form a strip of land long enough for a path or greenway unless the government could threaten to use that power. And that's exactly the problem, Representative Rubel. Governments, including our own government here, directly and indirectly, have threatened to use this power. So far they haven't done so, but the Greenway people would very much like to see eminent domain be used to get their greenway completely linked up. So while I'm sure it is not the intent of this bill to stop the development of greenways and bike paths in Idaho, I think that will be the effect, Rubel said. The Senate passed the bill last month. The bill still allows use of eminent domain for paths running directly alongside roads. It doesn't affect the state's eminent domain authority for roads and schools. So kudos again to Jim Guthrie. Jim and I disagree on a number of things, but we agree on more than we disagree. And although I'm not his biggest cheerleader, I was at one time, I'm not anymore, I do raise the pom-pom, if you will, Jim, for getting this through. Thank you very much. All right. This is from Saturday, March 21st, gay marriage. Regarding impeaching federal judges who legislate same-sex marriage. The story is told about Abraham Lincoln in an argument, not on this topic fortunately, with another man. Lincoln: how many legs does a dog have? Man: 4. Lincoln: well, how many legs would a dog have if you called the tail a leg? Man: 5. Lincoln: no, the dog would still have 4 legs. Calling the tail a leg doesn't make it a leg. Calling the relationship between men or between women marriage does not make it marriage. No federal judge, no U.S. president, no national or state legislature has the authority to redefine marriage, because none of these instituted marriage. To claim that there is a same-sex marriage fools ourselves, deadens our conscience, and confuses our young people. And that was from Monty Ledford in Aberdeen. And Monty, I don't have to say, I certainly agree with you. Matter of fact, and while we're on that subject, I do have, I have a couple of things here to share with you. There was an interesting article, since the LGBTQ thing is, as I've shared with you before, the LGBTQ do not want to make things right. They want to punish you if you do not go along with their agenda. And we've seen this time and again. The idea is not to right a wrong, it's to punish anybody who does not go along with the gay agenda, so-called. This was an article in National Review, March 25th. This is out of the paper, reading it from here. A lesbian columnist wrote a piece in The Guardian complaining that the straight women who wear less than feminine clothing are appropriating lesbian culture and making it too hard for lesbians to tell who the other lesbians are. I'm not making this up, folks. The columnist, named Sophie Wilkinson, describes the trend of what she calls unisex as a new thing, blaming the high street ubiquity of unisex outfitters, such as American Apparel and Uniqlo, and the androgynous cuts of Scandinavian shops like COS. What was once a queer-owned style has shifted to the mainstream, being appropriated by straight women to the point that it's now impossible to infer a sexual orientation from the way a woman dresses. Wilkinson writes in a piece titled Butch Chic, How the Gender-Neutral Trend Has Ruined My Wardrobe. I said I'm not making this up. According to Wilkinson, examples of this butch chic style includes printed t-shirts, skirts without peplums or lace, torn vests, riot girl boots, GRRL, and in general outfits where functionality takes precedence. Now Wilkinson is right to say that lots of, well, and the whole thing is, I just find it humorous that this lesbian is really upset with you straight women because you're wearing butch attire, and it's making it difficult for her to know another lesbian because of the way you dress. And even though I don't agree with about 90% of today's apparel, that I find that rather humorous. And along these same lines, I've got to share this with you. Now I'm going to read this the way it is written, so you can infer from it what you will. And I will try to put the correct emphasis on it. I will try to read it as if this person is speaking to you. This is February 14th. So I'm a little bit out of order on things here, but it kind of came up. February 14th. Trent proposed at the Old Towns Actors Studio performance of Crazy Little Thing Called Love. Nobody knew except for Trent, and there was not a dry eye in the house. It was such a beautiful moment to share with such a beautiful person. I love my fiancée. Okay, so the full story of the engagement is as follows, exclamation points. Trent stopped by my work earlier in the day to drop off my cell phone, which I left at home, and he brought a single red rose and a very sweet card. I was like, oh, Valentine's Day, sappy romance, yay! I had called and made reservations at the Old Town Actors Studio to see Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and you should see it because it was so amazing. As we're leaving for the show, Trent brings me 2 wine glasses, a bag of extra dark Lindt truffles, and asks me to hold on to them. I was like, is there an after party? And he was like, I don't know, is there? And I was like, I don't know. But when we got to the theater, I remembered you can drink wine during the performance. We get there, and Bridget Close suggests we sit in the front. I'm like, oh no. Then after we sit down and get settled, Trent tells me we're going to be pulled up to participate. I debate with him for a second about whether I want more wine to relax or want no more wine to keep my wits about me. I decided on more wine. Then I know, as Scott Lindenberg and Joe Krupper begin to dance, this is where we get pulled up. They identify us as a yes couple. You have to see the show. And set us up across from each other on stage with a small box of chocolates and some sparkling cider. Trent feeds me a small chocolate, and the audience ahs. I, being so shy, decide to start chowing down on the chocolate that remains. The audience laughs. Then the 2 dancers leave the stage and come back on with a set of plastic handcuffs. Now I'm thinking this is where it starts to get crazy. But they just handcuffed my left hand with Trent's right hand. They stand us up and move our chairs to face the audience. In this movement, Trent's hand becomes unhooked from mine, which is totally fine because somebody yells, he's down on one knee, and I say, no, in disbelief. This is my favorite part. All I remember is Trent saying something about how I've been there with him for over 3 years. He asked the question. It's so quiet, but I feel this rushing sound in my ears. I can only feel my hand in his, wetness on my cheeks and my heart in every inch of my body as I say yes. And let me tell you, an audience cheering for you and crying with you as you kiss the man you love is a special experience I never thought I would have. And then the show goes on. We laugh. I continue crying while laughing, and another couple gets engaged too. My heart is full, and I'm just holding his hand and reveling in how so much and so little has just changed in a moment. We stayed up way too late celebrating with friends, Timmy Acostin, Tiffany Chandler, Jaron Hansen, Julie Lyervan Sickle and her husband, and got to share the news in church this morning among a loving and beautiful church family. Overall, it has been a joyous time all around. All I can say is I'm excited to share the love I have for Trent with all the love our friends and family have for us together and individually. It's a beautiful time. And I'm looking forward to planning a day to celebrate our love for each other and a future with us side by side, taking life's ups and downs one day at a time. And that is Chris Cole, the television personality on Channel 8, the news reporter on Chris Cole. So Chris Cole is engaged to Trent Clegg. Trent Clegg works at the library. And I don't know if there's going to be an official announcement in the Idaho State Journal in the weekly thing about engagements and birthdays and all that. And I don't know anything about if they're going to have a church wedding. There are some churches in town that would do a same-sex marriage, I'm sure. And I don't know what the color theme is going to be, and I don't know who's going to, and I really don't know on a same-gender marriage, does somebody give the groom away? I don't know. Okay, so that's in the news. You know, if you have a pencil and paper, write this down, would you please? This is a book you may want to, now the book is a little bit outdated in that it was written back in about 1994. But the material is not outdated and is something I think you would find well worth reading. The Menace of Multiculturalism, Trojan Horse in America by Alvin J. Schmidt. Professor Schmidt, I don't know where he teaches. The Menace of Multiculturalism, Trojan Horse in America by Alvin J. Schmidt. And one of the things that he points out here, and I've got a piece I want to read to you that kind of emphasizes why I'm saying this. Now, not so long ago, and I'm just reading a paragraph right out of the book. This is from sexual perversion to sexual preference. Not so long ago, one could finish high school and not know that an extremely small percentage of people in society were homosexuals. Today, children in kindergarten, if not earlier, hear about some individuals being called gay or homosexual. These youngsters may not understand what these terms really mean, but they do know that these individuals do something different sexually. And I find that rather ironic. The book, as I said, is The Menace of Multiculturalism, The Trojan Horse in America by Alvin J. Schmidt. I find that interesting because there's a 16-year-old boy, I think he's in Wisconsin, that wrote a modern version of the Lord's Prayer. Now, I don't know what church you belong to, and I don't know if your church uses the Lord's Prayer, but it's pretty universally known among Orthodox Christians as well as others. But this kid is he's a kid in Minnesota, and he wrote the modern day version of the Lord's Prayer. Now I sit me down in school where praying is against the rule, for this great nation under God finds mention of him very odd. If Scripture now the class recites, it violates the Bill of Rights. And any time my head I bow becomes a federal matter now. Our hair can be purple, orange, or green. That's no offense, it's a freedom scene. The law is specific, the law is precise. Prayers spoken aloud are a serious vice. For praying in a public hall might offend someone with no faith at all. In silence alone we must meditate. God's name is prohibited by the state. We're allowed to cuss and dress like freaks and pierce our noses, tongues, and cheeks. They've outlawed guns, but first, the Bible. To quote the good book makes me liable. We can elect a pregnant senior queen and the unwed daddy our senior king. It's inappropriate to teach right from wrong. We're taught that such judgments do not belong. We can get our condoms and birth controls, study witchcraft, vampires, and totem poles, but the 10 Commandments are not allowed. No word of God must reach this crowd. It's scary here, I must confess. When chaos reigns, the school's a mess. So Lord, this silent plea I make, should I be shot, my soul, please take. Amen. And one more nail in the coffin, or the lid of the coffin, for natural law. All right, so this is for March 27th, the Your Letter section. Any chance the liberal press gets to bash Christians is right there on the spot. From the statements in your March 6th editorials, Christians can't disapprove of foreign religions without being accused of hypocrisy. But the know-it-all libs in the Fourth Estate can bash conservatives with impunity. So Hindus have glowing golden rule style proverbs that nobody else emulates. Does that make up for the fact that they worship cows, though they deny it? So what would you suggest we do? Embrace Hinduism such that America becomes like India? We're already losing our civilization because of extraneous superstitions arriving in droves. Look at the people from Somalia who practice genital mutilation on their young girls. Although they try to downplay it, Hindus have a caste system in India whereby certain groups have a higher status than others. Don't you think that would be just the thing to do? That was by Terry Jacobson here in Pocatello. Now that was in response to a letter. Let's see if this was one of my favorite people that wrote this. Well, it was in the Idaho State Journal. Will the real Christians please stand up? 3 Idaho lawmakers separated their church from the state this week. Acting anything but Christian, 3 Republican legislators refused to attend Tuesday's invocation in the Idaho Senate because it was a message of hope and humanity delivered by a Hindu. And I love the way these guys that write these things, I can't say that this is one of my favorite locals here. I think it is. But usually these criticisms are written by atheists or people who have a much different, like a UU, that, you worship rocks, that's fine. God of Abraham, that's good too. Cows, okay. They don't put these things in context. So this guy is beating up on these 3 Republicans who had the temerity to not do as he wants them to do. And it was shared both in English and the ancient language Sanskrit by guest chaplain Rajan Zed. The trio of intolerance, and I love these liberals are always so tolerant. And so these guys who, for their religious beliefs, walked out, which may not have been the best way to do it. You don't have to, when I've been to city councils and they have an imam giving the prayer, I don't bow. And in fact, while the imam is praying his prayer, I will silently pray to God, not Allah. And I will ask God to save the imam from Islam. So I don't have to leave the room to do that. That being said, the trio of intolerance was composed of Senators Steve Vick of Dalton Garden, Cheryl Nuxall of Cottonwood, and Lori Den Hartog of Meridian. They just couldn't bring themselves to listen to outlandish statements like, "Fulfill all your duties, action is better than inaction," Zed said. "Even to maintain your body, you are obligated to act. Selfish action imprisons the world. Act selfishly without any throughout of personal profit." I think it's supposed to be thought. It's the Idaho State Journal. The word doesn't have to be spelled correctly. I think a lot of the people who write for the Journal, or they don't seem to have, they have editors, but they don't have proofreaders. So I think a lot of the words that they use are like French. There are no rules in French. NEXZL means hello. That's French, So I guess that's what this is. It's one of those French words. Nuxall told the Associated Press she declined to attend because she believes the United States is a Christian nation. Hindu is a false faith with false gods, she said. Vic tried to get other legislators to boycott the Hindu invocation. He told the Spokesman Review that Hindus have a caste system and they worship cows. Now, isn't it interesting if a Muslim had walked out on this thing, everybody would have said, oh, they're pious. And, they are Muslims and they believe in Allah, so we're okay with that. That would have been all right. But these Christians who don't believe in worshiping cows and decided to display their feelings by walking out, they get castigated. Interesting, the tolerance of the left is somewhat intolerant. Well, you get the picture. Anyway, so they got beat up, and of course the Idaho State Journal was glad to report that. We have about 4 minutes. Well, as usual, I've run out of time before I run out of things to read. Oh, here's one I can do quickly, though, and maybe next week we'll get to the body bags. Did you see this thing where Hillary Clinton's, her supporters have said that there are certain words you can't use when you're talking about Hillary Clinton? Think about these words and think about these things that you know about the Clinton gang, especially Her Highness Hillary. You're not allowed to use these words if you're talking about her. Polarizing. Polarizing? Hillary? Come on. Calculating. Not Hillary. Disingenuous. Hillary? Insincere. Oh, Hillary? Ambitious. Hillary? What was it? Inevitable. They're talking about her, you know, immaculation, her coronation, whatever. Entitled, although she does feel like she is. Overconfident. Secretive, and we know from the missing emails that she's not secretive. She just used her own servers and her own phones to do her own business for you and me. Not secretive. Will do anything to win. Hillary? Oh. Represents the past. What past? Out of touch. With whom? Tone deaf. So this is from this particular thing. I went online because I'd seen this on television. I thought, I've got to find out what they're talking about here. So this was from a website called The Hayride. That's a commercial. Anyway, The Hayride. And the guy who was writing this is polarizing? Yep, nothing polarizing about this. Calculating? I usually pair this with the term cold, as in Cold War or cold, loveless marriage. Disingenuous? Like when Chick said, say, I'm not looking for anything serious, or, you know, I'm on the pill, or when, you know, Bill pretended he was crying about the death of Ron Brown when actually he was laughing. That was a travesty in itself. And maybe we'll talk about the body count. Insincere? What about insecure? Isn't that more of a sexist term? I know a lot of women who are insecure. Some might say, I have radar for it. And that's the guy that's writing this thing here. Ambitious. Women are lazy. Everybody knows that. How come most of them don't even work, like Ann Romney? Pfft, bunch of sexists. Inevitable. It's inevitable that this adjective would be considered sexist at some point. Entitled. I drive these brothers crazy. I do it on the daily. They treat me really nicely. They buy me all these ices. Dolce and Gabbana, Fendi, and that Donna Karan. They be shaming all their money. Got me wearing fly. I have no idea what this guy is saying. Well, we're out of time, so maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it next week. In the meantime, be sure and tune in for Aaron Hayes this Sunday at 5 o'clock, and I want to leave you with one thought. I want to die peacefully in my sleep like my grandfather, not screaming and yelling like the passengers in the car. God bless you and yours. Have a good, safe week. God willing, we'll see you next week. In the meantime, God bless you. Good night.